So when it comes to major sporting promotions, meaning the NFL, MLB, NHL, the NBA, the UFC is the only one that lets their competition get away with almost anything. As long as you don't kill someone or take some sort of steroid, you're basically going to keep fighting until Dana doesn't think you're good enough anymore. And even if you are, some people just piss Dana off in the wrong way and he lets them go. But when your whole company is based on hiring the most violent people in the world, not all of them are going to be as cordial as DC or Anthony Smith or Michael Bisping. A lot of the times they're going to be like Sean Strickland and Conor McGregor and Chael Sonnen, in that they don't care what they say or who they say it to. Now, while those are some extreme examples, they are good ones because I can guarantee you that if any of the stuff those three get quoted for was repeated by any athlete playing in any of these leagues, at least a 5-game suspension before they even decide what to do with you. We all remember what happened to Kyrie Irving, but recently Bryce Mitchell, a UFC fighter who I was a fan of before this, went on his own podcast, Arkansanity, for the first episode, mind you, to praise Hitler like he was Kanye doing whiteface. Now, before we get into that, some people might have said that this was expected. This was to be expected. This could have been on everyone's 2025 bingo card. For those who don't know who Bryce Mitchell is, just imagine Forrest Gump becoming a UFC fighter. They both got that southern accent, they both love God, and they're both not all that smart. Now, will Bryce beat the shit out of me? Any day of the year. Any white boy with the nickname Thug Nasty is either a SoundCloud rapper or a UFC fighter with a 17-2 record. He also dropped a rap album, so he could be both. But all that brawn won't get you these brains, you freaking hillbilly. And along with his recent Hitler statement, he is also a raging conspiracy theorist. He has said that COVID-19 was created in a lab by the US government and then deliberately released upon everyone. He thinks the US government stages mass shootings to advance their gun agenda. He thinks the Federal Reserve is a corruption institution that is manipulating the value of the US dollar.
The Federal Reserve is a corrupt institution. These people control our dollar, brother, and we didn't vote for them. Think about it.
He thinks the earth is flat and that gravity is a hoax.
Let me tell you something right now, Bisping. Gravity ain't real. You know what?
He calls Elon Musk a false prophet and potential antichrist. And in 2024, he said that he would homeschool his son because he did not want him to become a communist, to worship Satan, or to be gay. Now, this guy's lucky he can fight because anyone else who believes in all of that has a front row seat to homelessness. This man is a 3-fight losing streak away from becoming one of those homeless people you see on the street telling you that the world is about to end. Only this one will beat the shit out of you if you tell him otherwise. But back to his podcast. Like I said, this was episode 1, which has since been deleted. So this guy didn't even let his podcast get to episode 2 before he had to cancel everything. Which is pathetic when you realize that even Talk 2 was able to make it to at least 13 episodes before everything came crashing down. But as I'm watching this podcast, I realize that this isn't a podcast, but more an excuse for Bryce to spread the word of God to everyone. Like, this thing's over an hour long, and no matter where you skip to, it seems like he's always bringing up something from the Bible. He even says,
Well, I believe that the Bible is word for word literally correct.
which is actually insane to believe when Noah, you know, the guy who built the ark, was said to have been 950 years old when he died. But all this Hitler talk started because they were talking about what Elon Musk did at Trump's rally, everyone knows, and apparently this triggered something in Bryce's raisin brain for him to start talking like he's this fucking profound historian who knows more than history itself.
Here's what I say about him, Hitler, hailing the Nazis. I really don't think that he was, because I honestly think that Hitler was a good guy based upon my own research, not my public education indoctrination. I really do think before Hitler got on meth, he was a guy to go fishing with. He fought for his country. He wanted to purify it by kicking the greedy Jews out that were destroying his country and turning them all into gays. They were gaying out the kids. They were queering out the women. They were queering out the dudes. They were, you know what her first tranny surgery ever was? Happened to be in Germany before Hitler took over. You know the books that everybody makes fun of Hitler burning? You know what the books was? Queer books. Hitler burned queer books because Hitler didn't want a bunch of queers destroying his nation. They can't produce children.
Now, the fact that he starts this off with, based on my own research and not my public education, should tell you everything you need to know. Not because he's uneducated, he is, but I mean, he went to college. Now, does that college have a history of being very racist? You bet. But it's also crazy how he talks about Hitler like they'd be buddies, which is something that a lot of racist people do, not realizing that the second he heard these people talk with their backwoods accents, he'd put them in front of a firing squad before they can finish introducing themselves. Just because you're white doesn't mean Hitler would give you a free pass. And then his reason for why Hitler chose to hate Jewish people doesn't even make any sense. He said it's because they were making everybody gay. You can look up homosexuality in Germany, and before the Nazis even took over, being gay was illegal. So I know that Jewish people weren't like, you know what would be really funny? Turning everyone we know gay. Don't you think that if they were doing that before the war, they would continue doing it after it ended? Why would they continue to do all their other traditions and ceremonies, except for the one that was apparently so important to them, it caused them to lose 6 million people over it? The guy that was causing everything is gone. Why go back to celebrating Hanukkah when turning gay was what you really wanted to do all along? And what the hell does the first transgender surgery being done in Germany have to do with anything? It was done a year after Hitler started rising to power, so obviously that didn't have any influence on him wanting to take over. Did he hear about it after the fact and was like, yeah, that's not going to be happening while I'm here? Of course. But did Bryce put any effort into researching that? Of course not. So to try and make it seem like Hitler was a good guy because he wanted to get rid of trans people after a surgery he didn't even know about took place shows that knockout by Josh Emmett did a little bit more brain damage than we originally thought.
And now, was Hitler perfect? No. But he was fighting for his people, okay? And he wanted a pure nation with people. You know what the Jews was doing? They was charging interest. Christians aren't allowed to do that. Like,
There's
if
plenty of Christians charging interest everywhere on the planet
I don't.
right now.
If you need to borrow $1,000, Rolly, I give you $1,000, and you wouldn't give me 1,100 back. You'd give me 1,000 back.
Sure, between
but
you and I,
these Jews were controlling his country, bro. They were so cold and starving. They were using their valueless money as insulation. They were stuffing dollars in their jacket to stay warm. They were burning dollars in their wood stove. Hitler comes up and says, hey, I'm kicking the Jews out of here because they're killing us with interest. And then now that he lost the war, he's the bad guy.
No, yeah, that makes total sense. Jewish people were charging Germans interest, so the German people were using their actual money as a heat source, a literal fucking heat source. These people would rather burn their money to stay warm than go out and buy something that would keep them warm for the many winters to come. Like, the way this guy just sits here, he's like, I really chose to do a podcast with this guy, and it took just over an hour to see why this was a bad idea. He even calls him out and says, Christians charge interest all the time. Interest isn't restricted by religion. Interest is a universal thing people ask for. And he's like, no, well, I don't ask for interest. Oh, good. So we can apply you to every Christian. No questions asked. And it's actually hilarious that Bryce says things like he's fighting for his country and the Jews were taken over. When you can fucking Google the Jewish population in Germany during the 1930s, and they made up less than 1% of the population. So either Hitler tried to do everything he was going to do in Poland first, which had the biggest Jewish population, and said, actually, you know what? I think I'm going to start small and then work my way to Poland. Or Bryce doesn't know what the fuck he's talking about. And I'm not the only one who thinks that. Here's what Dana White said about him.
I've heard a lot of dumb, ignorant shit in my day, but this one's probably the worst. When you talk about Hitler, he's responsible for the death of 6 million Jews, and he tried to completely eliminate a race of people. Second of all, Hitler is one of the most disgusting and evil human beings to ever walk the face of the earth, and anyone that even tries to take an opposing position is a moron. We've obviously reached out to Bryce and let him know how we feel about it. We're beyond disgusted. I think he's probably one of the dumbest, literally one of the dumbest human beings. Let's not forget that this is a guy who took a drill through his nutsack, then had to reverse it and put the drill back out of his. That's the level of stupid that we're talking about here. And I could probably go on for 10 minutes talking about how dumb Bryce Mitchell is. But guess what? Bryce Mitchell has a podcast.
I believe this was episode 1.
What a way to start.
Now, I don't think I've ever heard Dana White call someone dumb that many times in one interview. And honestly, this is what should happen to an athlete who says some incredibly dumb shit. A bunch of people who are above them just start calling them stupid. Bryce is watching this press conference probably not even realizing why he's being called stupid. But hey, it got him to delete the whole podcast and probably never release episode 2. But yeah, guys, that's what happens when you try to say something profound based on your own research. Sometimes that works out, but in this case, you can tell it definitely did not. Until tomorrow. Peace.